All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the ninth installment of our Acadiana Business Resource webinar series. My name is Andre Bro, and I work on the team at One Acadiana. Our Acadiana Business Resource webinars are brought to you by business resource partners from across the Acadiana region, including One Acadiana, LEDA, Opportunity Machine, the Downtown Development Authority, the Louisiana Small Business Development Center at UL Lafayette, Acadiana Workforce Solutions, the United Way of Acadiana, and other local chambers and economic development offices from around the Acadiana region. We have come together to support Acadiana's business community, particularly our small businesses, by hosting a series of webinars on timely and relevant topics. Today's webinar, the ninth in the series, will be a conversation on getting back to work safely. After the presentation, we will use the remaining time for Q&A. As you have questions for our panelists, please submit them through the Q&A feature. We will be monitoring the questions as we go. If we do not have time to get to all of the questions during today's webinar, we will provide contact information for you to follow up with us afterwards. Today's webinar will be more conversational than some of our past webinars. Ryan Lagrange, Director of Workforce Development at LEDA, will moderate a panel discussion with leaders at 4 companies within the Acadiana region. These leaders and companies are Chad Abell of ACSW Architects, Tessa Brown of CCI Piping Systems, Neil Davis of Acadian Companies, and Brent Hebert of Dupre Logistics. Following the panel discussion, Ryan and I will moderate a Q&A session to take some of your questions from the audience. As a reminder, please feel free to submit your questions for our panelists using Zoom's Q&A feature. Today's webinar on getting back to work safely could not have been more timely following Governor John Bel Edwards' announcement yesterday that Louisiana will enter the first phase of reopening, effective this Friday, May 15th. As has been reported, according to the governor, phase 1 includes the welcome news that restaurants will be allowed to reopen for dine-in services if they limit indoor table service to 25% of their capacity, with additional outdoor seating still allowed following the fire marshal's guidance. Additionally, bars that offer food service, barber shops, nail salons, gyms, casinos, churches, and other places of worship can open at 25% of their capacity. Employees interacting with the public are required to wear masks, and vulnerable populations like the elderly and those with underlying conditions are encouraged to continue to shelter in place. The new restrictions will be in place for 21 days until June 5th, with another announcement from the governor expected June 1st. Businesses should register at opensafely.la.gov to receive applicable guidance, as well as updates from the State Fire Marshal's Office and the Louisiana Department of Health. As we move forward with phase 1 of reopening, it's critical that businesses have a plan in place to bring employees back into the workplace safely. Our business leaders on today's panel will discuss some of the policies and protocols they are implementing at their own companies. Additionally, One Acadiana has released a new resource, our Workplace Readiness Playbook, which outlines some of the best practices and strategies to protect your employees, your workplace, and your community. We have posted this playbook on our COVID-19 resources page, and I'll share the link to that web page in the chat pod shortly. Following the webinar, we will also upload some of the other back to work resources that our panelists have made available. Without further ado, we will now transition to our panel discussion, and I will turn it over to Ryan Lagrange, Director of Workforce Development at LEDA. Ryan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andre. Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to serve as moderator for this morning's webinar, where you will have the opportunity to learn some best practices from business owners, business executives, and human resource professionals from a diverse group of businesses, including healthcare, transportation, manufacturing, and professional services industries. During my 12 years working at LEDA, I've had the pleasure of working with all 4 of these companies that will serve on our panel today. In light of COVID-19 pandemic, LEDA has also had to make transition not only from having our workers start to work remotely from home, but also transitioning our team at our office to become a business resource call center through the Lafayette 311. In addition to our team advising local businesses on new stimulus programs for businesses and unemployment insurance, we've also started to hear concerns that local businesses have about bringing their workers back to work. So this topic is a very timely discussion for our business community. We will talk with our panelists in 3 phases, starting with how they handled the rapid exit due to the stay-home order, what adjustments and pivots to their business operations, and then finally our phased reopening and return to work, both workplace and workforce, and how that is affected. So first, I'd like to kick off our discussions with each of our panelists introducing themselves, to include information such as the role within your business, how many employees your company employs, are your workers hourly or salary employees or a mix, and broadly, what did your workplace setting look like prior to COVID and post the stay-at-home order? So let's go alphabetical. We'll start with Brent, alphabetical by first name. If you don't mind unmuting, Brent.
All right, good morning, guys. Brent Hebert with Dupre Logistics, Chief Administrative Officer at Dupre. So that's HR, legal, over accounting and finance areas as well, and IT support. All right, we have about 1,350 employees. That's in about 15 states with about 50 different locations. So a myriad of things we have to deal with. 80% of our employees are hourly, 20% are office staff. Staff is primarily work from office setting. We have truck drivers, but our truck drivers are not over the road, they're local, home daily. So it does change our operation and what you may think of in trucking. So mostly mechanics and truck drivers who were paid for performance. After the stay-at-home order, we transitioned to remote work fairly quickly to everybody who could, alternate schedules, maintaining the office and making sure trucks and the maintenance shops and the positions who couldn't work from home stayed healthy and safe. Immediate changes we did after the stay-home order, and I'll talk about this in the middle portion, is that we focused on a war room kind of effort to do some scenario planning, which really set the stage for us during the pandemic and coming out of pandemic, so we can not only be safe, but take advantage of some of the opportunities that may exist coming out of this. All right.
Thank you, Brent. And as you can see, we're talking to companies that are large and small and kind of the full spectrum. So next, let's talk with Chad. If you can do your intro.
Hi, yeah, I'm Chad Abell with ACSW Architects. I'm one of 3 principals. We have 17 employees, very contrasted to Brent's. Everyone is salary. They're all exempt employees. They're all in the office. Well, we're in the office, and to complicate things a little bit for us, on February 1st, we merged 2 companies, and so we added a lot more people that all came into one office environment. And so we were already kind of trying to figure out how to put more people in the same space that we had before. And so that put people in closer proximity to each other than was advisable. And so that created a little bit of a challenge. The big thing for us is that we have a very dynamic, collaborative culture in the office where everybody works together on teams and we really collaborate. So that was a challenge that we had to overcome. We sent everybody home, right away, and within 24 hours, we're up and running at full capacity for the most part. Everybody under 40 had to help the guys over 40, make the transition a little bit, but right away we were able to get back up and really continue doing what we were doing. The collaborative thing was just a challenge that we had to overcome, and kind of like Brent, I can talk about that a little bit more in the second part, but that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Chad. All right, now we'll talk with Neil. If you can do your introduction.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Neil Davis at Acadian Companies. I am the Director of Health, Safety, and Environment for all of Acadian Companies. Acadian Companies, as probably most of you know, is Acadian Ambulance and the Air Med services. But we also have other business units such as the executive charter, NIMSA, which is our EMS school, ATS, Acadian Total Security, which does the security and monitoring, and then finally Safety Management Systems, which is our consultant industrial group. Overall, we probably have around 5,000 employees in about 5 states now. And so pre-COVID, you know, we were doing calls, transports as normal, and then our office folks were working out of the office. And after that, it kind of changed really drastically. We sent as many office-based people as we could to work from home, just simply to get them out of the environment, because, you know, we have a very, very astute IT personnel who can arrange this for us and make that transition pretty seamless. And then on the medical side, you know, we didn't have the luxury of pulling anybody from the truck. So we still had to serve the public, still had to run emergencies and transports. And so we had to do a lot of engagement to figure out new PPE resources and really try to maintain that inventory. But basically done all through our emergency operations center and kind of just maintain that transition to where we are today.
All right, thank you, Neil. And then our final panelist is Tessa.
Good morning. I'm Tessa Brown. I'm excited to be here this morning and share some good info. I am the HR manager for CCI Piping Systems. I also serve on the board of Acadiana Society for Human Resource Management, which is an affiliate of the national organization, Society for Human Resource Management, or you may know it as SHRM. So for CCI, we are a manufacturing facility in Oak Ridge with just under 50 folks. And once we, you know, as everyone else heard about the order, we, the leadership team, got together, and everyone who was able to work from home went home. And luckily, we already kind of had, as part of our business continuity plan, some IT systems in place to do that with some ease. So that helped, while everyone else is still at the shop, still making products. And that is where probably 2/3 of our employees remain. And we'll get into what we've done to make sure that what protocols we've put in place for them, and then what we're doing for our staff that's working at home.
All right, thank you for the introductions. Now we're going to move on to that first phase that I mentioned. So I'll ask Chad to kind of talk about primarily, and any of the other panel members can certainly chime in as well. You know, kind of take us through the initial step of when the stay-home order was ordered, and, you know, y'all's immediate transition to remote work, and what were some things that y'all put in place that worked well, and as well as some struggles?
Well, you know, interestingly, we started with a plan to kind of do what it looks like we're going to do, you know, probably next week, which is kind of a revolving schedule, just to kind of de-densify, you know, the office. So that was phase one. We actually never implemented that because right after that, we got the order for everybody to go home. And so, like I said, we pretty quickly were able to technologically disperse, kind of like everybody else was saying. The problem is with what we do is that it is a very, not just in the office, but it's very collaborative with our clients. And so we had to get pretty creative at figuring out how to continue to have the same quality of experience with being able to communicate in the way that we were able to in person. And so we investigated a couple of software platforms. We kind of found that we were a little bit more proficient than we really thought that we were, because we're accustomed to working with remote teams. And so we were able to do a lot of that, where we're able to draw on both sides of the screen. You know, we can kind of illustrate things, and then you can illustrate things on your side. And that really allowed us to continue to move things forward. Because interestingly, we did have a few projects get put on hold, but we had a lot of clients who wanted to sort of take advantage of the downtime and continue to move things forward. So we had to really be inventive and try to figure out how to do that. The other real thing that was a challenge is that we really focus a lot on our culture in the office. It's just a really good learning environment. We share a lot of information together. We have a lot of social things that we do to be able to help build a team. And because we just went through this merger, we were really focused on being pretty deliberate about that. And so we had to make a pretty conscious effort to be over communicative. And then we also just got kind of, I thought it was really interesting. I tried to really make sure I've talked to most everybody in the office, you know, at least once a week. And they're being very inventive. They're taking kind of group workout sessions, you know, where they're videoing each other doing that. We had a couple of virtual happy hours. We have tried to have a group up meeting at least once a week with everybody together, just trying to continue to really have that that cohesive kind of group that we had before. What I'm finding today, in fact, people are kind of dribbling. I've been coming to the office, you know, just to be able to be, we're a small office, not like the other guys that have a full IT department. And so I've just been trying to make sure that the computers are staying, you know, on, and people occasionally need something rebooted or something like that. But people are really craving coming back to be in that environment. We did find that in the time that everybody was at home, that people were very productive. In fact, I think we've learned a lot of lessons about things that we may try to figure out how to implement when everybody comes back together, that are going to be, you know, to continue that very productive atmosphere. You know, if you're at home by yourself, kind of zoned in, you can get a lot done in a short period of time, but you miss the social aspect.
That's some great points, and I took notes. Virtual happy hour. Does anyone else have any comments on kind of that rapid, you know, transition to the stay-at-home order?
Yeah, I do. Ours is a little different. Thanks, Chad. Ours is a little different in that we did the remote work. I'd want to talk more about, you know, what we did for our drivers and people who couldn't be at home. You know, we did the similar things that Chad and them did, but for the people who couldn't, we had to spend a lot of time and effort of figuring out, okay, how are we going to make them safe? I mean, how are we going to give them solace that they're safe and what we could do? So we had to relook at how we do shift change. Our drivers slip seat and get out of truck into another truck. We had to make sure it's clean and disinfect every day. So we couldn't find a lot of stuff to order because you guys are probably buying it all, but we couldn't find it. So we did what Cajuns do. We figured it out. We made our own stuff. So we went on CDC. We made our own things. It's really funny when you go to different locations. We ordered it in bulk, sent it to locations. Some of them have water coolers where they dispense it out. You know, there's just, you know, creative ways that they did this, and then keeping people away from the coffee pots, keeping people from socially gathering. For truck drivers, I mean, they're in the truck most of the day. They're home every night, but they kind of like jawing at each other and shift change. We had to change schedules, break them at different times. They didn't all start at the same time. So a lot of creative things. And we just listened to our drivers saying, look, you want to be safe? Let's talk about what we can do. So that was interesting and quite engaging, because we really went to them, to our people, and said, what do you think is going to make you safe? And that helped out a lot.
Very good. Any other comments before we move on? All right. So next up, I'd like to kind of talk with Brent, if you can kind of expand on a discussion in regard to, you know, how did y'all adjust y'all's business operations after the stay-home order? What type of business pivot did you guys go through?
Yeah, what I'm going to talk about is you may think it's just important for a larger organization, but I think, and I'm going to provide the resources that you can use that could guide you through this. I think it's important for any organization. If you haven't gone through this exercise, I would recommend you do anyway, just for your business. But what we did is we used some guidance from a company called Bain, who's a kind of a think tank and does a lot of consulting work or whatever. They do some good work, and they put out some stuff on the pandemic that really kind of shocks you and said, look, you really need to, this is not going to be like any other crisis. You need to think the worst. You need to plan for the worst. You need to really challenge and get real honest with what's going to happen and what are you going to do. and do scenario planning and get things in place. So really they break it down into levels. So we decided as a company for an executive team and a next level leadership team that we were going to break down and we're going to work, we work nonstop for a week to get this together. That means weekend, everything else, because we knew we wanted to have a good message for our people that was grounded and hopeful, but we needed to be grounded and hopeful that we really thought we had a plan. And so we put that together. It was a lot of work. We put it together. We sent out templates of it to our leadership team in the field and said, we're not going to tell you what our plan is. You tell us what your plan is. Once they shared their plan, we upgraded our plan and then we shared it across the entire company. But it allowed us to then to write informative communication messages about things that they were worried about. And then secondarily, a really good communication strategy that's grounded but hopeful. If any of you have heard of the Stockdale paradox and Admiral Stockdale, why he made it out of prison camp, he said the optimistic people never made it out. It was the people who were grounded and hopeful that looked at the situation, had an unwavering faith that they're going to prevail, and then they were able to be hopeful about that, and they made it through. And I think we're in a Stockdale moment, so we felt we needed to do this. This took some time, so we put in a fair amount of work to do that, and it allowed us to write communications accordingly at the different phases. So we kind of put it in phases, started drafting what we thought we would say. Of course, we edited it probably 300 million times, as you guys did as well. And then we put a video together from Reggie, our owner, which we knew people would want to see and want to hear from. That's on our website as well. And I also provided to Ryan and Andre those written messages that may help you as well. But many of the things allowed us to get back to, and I like to read the original message and see if this resonates. But for us, we wanted to have a message that was intended to inform them of the values and the objectives that were guiding our decisions, right? Because we were going to be making a lot, and you had to make a lot of decisions that may not make sense to them. We wanted them to know, not get into the decisions, but know what's guiding our decisions. So our decisions and actions will reflect those values and objectives. So though sometimes you may question that statement. I'm not getting into specific decisions or actions. This is intended for you to know what's guiding our actions. We want to keep our team together. We want to meet our customers' needs at the end of this event. Over 40 years, we have together built a company that has a strong balance sheet, which gives us the ability to weather the storm. We will use this strong financial position to help us accomplish these two objectives. Let me be clear. First objective, meet the demands and the needs of our customers now and after this event. Secondly, keep our team safe and keep our team together to meet the customer's needs. So every decision we were making, everything we went through, like for instance, when half the executives wanted to put everybody, keep them at work and keep them moving, we were able to say, now how does that go against this? Diametrically opposed. We're not going to do it. When we're wanting to return, everybody wants everybody back to work. We look back at this, we're not bringing people back to work. We're going to work remotely, and we're going to adjust, and we're going to phase it in, and we'll probably be bringing people back in phase 2, not phase 1. Except for our essential employees. We are considered essential workers. So we've been working from the get-go. So all in all, I think that's guided our communication and it's guided our decision-making. And when we have tough decisions to make, we go back to all that work we did, which really talked about this. Now that work was very detailed. We had a level 1, level 2, level 3, and a worst case scenario. Level 1, 10% reduction in revenue and margin. Level 2, 25%. Level 3, 40% in a liquidity crisis, right? Where are we going to get cash? How are we going to keep things going? So we looked at each of those levels. We identified operational triggers that would happen to kick that off. What were the defensive actions that we would take to keep our revenue and our margins so that we could keep our people working? Then how do we stabilize operations and actions in the new normal? And then what were our urgent cost takeouts, right? Because you're going to have some. And that could be furloughs, it could be layoffs, it could be not that, it could be just transitioning people. So we did a lot of creative things around that, but at least we had a plan to adjust. And so my message to you guys is that plan made a lot of our decisions a whole lot easier. And now all we had to do is say, what is the CDC saying now? Well, how does that fit with our plan? And sometimes we took it, but we've been probably more cautious than not because of the plan, not because we're smart, just because we had something that was our guiding principle. That's kind of the backdrop of how we made it through this phase so far.
Yeah, great information. And I love that you touched on, that communication with the employees so they know what's guiding the decisions, and it's not, what is going on here and why. That's great. You did mention a template of some sort. I know that Andre will give us some updates on where folks can find that. That will be made available to folks that are listening to the event today. Any other comments from our other panelists on that adjustment and that pivot time frame?
I will add this. Oh, go ahead.
Brent, can you talk about how you communicated with your employees? I know not everyone sits behind a computer, so how are y'all getting the information out?
We have thank God for our benefits department. Our guys don't have. We have in-truck cab communication, which is a computer in the cab. You can't really communicate a lot with that. So we can send some messages through that, when they log in, not when they're driving. Okay, so don't be scared of our trucks. It's when they log in, log out, when they're offline. We use a lot of text and email with them. So when we do benefits enrollment each year, we gather their email address. And we also are first responders. So every year, once a year, like right now, we're getting prepared for hurricane season. We have all their emergency contact information, so email and phone number. And so I was able to pepper people with ongoing communications, throughout the time. And then we also had daily meetings with our directors and our business units in the field. We have two times a week. We'd have, I think one of y'all talked about business continuity. We have a business continuity team, which is all of our people in the field, and we would filter all communications through them. They would pass it down to their locations. But we tried to make it personal by sending text and or emails directly to individuals. We had it in 3 areas. One was, here's the health and benefits. Here's how you take care of yourself. Here's the kind of stuff you need to do. Secondly, here's all the information. Here's what we're doing, not doing, that keeps people posted, like which states are opening up, which are not, those kind of things. And then thirdly was more of what I call that grounded but hopeful approach. And you'll see we tried to leave much of that to either come from myself or from Reggie, that kind of made people feel like less detail, more like, hey, we're going to make it. We're going to get through this. We've done it before. We've been here 40 years. We're going to make it, that kind of thing. So we try to do it in layers. That makes sense. Don't try to wrap it all together, but
Yes.
at different times. Seem to work at times better than others, but I think for the most part, when managers start saying, hey, quit texting my guys because they're stopping to read your stuff, we know that it was working.
Good. And Neil, did you have a comment as well?
Well, I was just going to add, right? I think the video snippets, the information that you send to your people was tremendously important. We had to do the very same thing. We were sending daily videos from our chief medical officer, Dr. Burnell, to basically the medics in the field, because they just want to know, right? They were just thirsting for, tell me what's going on and tell me that there's a path. And keeping them informed, we got tremendous feedback from the people in the field that those videos really just gave them the guidance on what to do, how the company was going, and the path that we were taking to get us through where we are today, right? So I just really wanted to reiterate. I think that's a very important thing to do.
Excellent. All right. So, and looking at our time, we're going to move on to our third stage, which is preparing workplaces and workforces to return to work safely. And I'll ask Neil if you can kick this section off on Acadian's new protocols for keeping the workplace safely.
Right, great. So as everyone saw, the governor did open up phase 1 yesterday. So we actually had to develop a plan about over 2 weeks ago because of the other states we work in had actually gone to phase 1 earlier. Texas, Mississippi, Tennessee, just as an example. So we had to actually gear up a plan a couple of weeks ago. We used the federal guidance from the White House as basically our overall guideline. We looked into some other plans as well from Texas, from as far away as Maine in some of these, the states and the guidance we were investigating. We also got guidance from a number of organizations that had pretty much consulted, looked at the guidelines, and then put together these packages. Now, most of these packages were 40, 50 pages long. If you're like me, I cannot stand 40 to 50 pages of documents. You send me a 40, 50 page document, I'm gonna immediately probably delete the email, right? So we tried to take these documents and basically, let's just see what we can do. We made it into a 3-page plan, right? I love 3 pages. If you can get the message across in 3 pages, why do we need to go to 4? So the plan that we put together is not rocket science at all, right? It's just basically all of this information put together in a simple, very easy to use guidance document for our field and management teams to make decisions within the confines of guidance, right? We tried to stay out of the black and white, tell me thou shalt do stuff, because that's where you get yourself in trouble. So the guidance document that we put together, I think we shared it with Andre and Ryan. I think they're going to send to you guys here as well. But it's really one, general health instruction, right? When you guys come back, there's certain things we're going to have to instruct them on, the new normal, right? Signs and symptoms of COVID. The basic things that we've been all hearing for several months now. Wash your hands, stay home if you're sick, all that kind of stuff, right? And then we're going to open up in phases. Again, with that White House federal document as our benchmark, the phase return. So phase 1, which we're going to start Friday, we're going to open up our personnel to 25% capacity in offices. Now, a lot of our offices had went down to 10%. Again, we tried to clean out as much in the office as we could. We're going to allow it to come back to 25%. We're going to take screening of employees coming back. Now, we've been doing screenings for a while with all of our medics on the trucks for probably over 2 months now. We're just going to have to incorporate that into the offices coming back. We've bought temperature thermometers, laser. We don't want to use any kind of oral. That's pretty nasty, to be honest with you. I think getting away from any kind of invasive temperature scan as much as you can. That's the thing to do. The main premise of everything we're going to do is to maintain 6 feet of social distancing. So if you haven't already done so, probably an assessment of your workplace to see, okay, can I keep 6 foot of distance, right? What areas is going to cause me challenges? We've got a bunch of cubicles, probably like most of you guys. And for our cubicles, we felt pretty comfortable because they came up high enough. They give a good distance. And so we kind of put in our guidance, 6 foot distance or a barrier separating employees. And we're going to add actually on a couple of cubicles, we're going to add some elevation, some plexiglass barriers to further that distance or that separation. The enhanced cleaning, we basically at least 3 times a day, you're going to get sick of cleaning stuff, right? All the common touch points, light switches, doorknobs, phones, desks, keyboards, all the things that people touch on a daily basis, really get those clean, especially with enhanced cleaning. One thing that helped us a lot as well, we're going to be doing in all of our offices, is all your internal doors open them. So the less that you have to touch a doorknob, the better, right? So if you can open your internal doors, keep them open, then you don't have to touch doorknobs. We don't have to worry about some of this stuff. So that was a big one. The common areas in break rooms, trying to keep 6 foot of distance. So we're going to have to remove some tables. We're going to have to remove some chairs, space it out, similar to what you're going to see in restaurants. Our guidance for some of these areas was about 40 square feet per person. Now, if you're an engineer, a mathematician, please do not check my math on this. But we use basically a 40 square foot radius, simply because 6 by 6 is 36. We added a little bit of a contingency in there, and then kind of did the whole radius thing with old math skills, and just 40 feet was kind of a good number where we felt was okay to limit the personnel into any one of these areas. And then anytime you can't have 6 foot distancing, we're gonna basically ask our people to wear face coverings, right? So it could be homemade, it could be something that they can bring from their house, anything that they made, and just protect themselves for when they're walking around. They can't ever get to a 6 foot distance. And then one other thing is elevators. A lot of people don't think about elevators, right? So we're gonna have to minimize the amount of people that we have in elevators. We have a few elevators at some office buildings. We're gonna have to put signage up to regulate that and restrict the usage of how many people in elevators. And then we're gonna go in the guidance with the state. So we'll get to phase 2, we'll go to 50%. Everything else will stay the same. And then we'll go to 50% capacity. And then phase 3, we're basically gonna get back to business as normal, whatever that looks like. I don't think we'll ever get away from this just space awareness and personal hygiene from here on out. So we're going to be looking at this. I know in the guidance document we shared with Ryan and Andre, it says 14 days after phase 1. The governor did say 21 days, so we'll have to amend that and at least go 21 days until we look at phase 2.
Thank you. Great information. Any of our other panelists want to comment on, kind of those adjustments made to the workplace as you prepare for folks to return to work before we move on?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that it's I think that that's a very good plan. Is that there's so much information. Healthy building science has been around for a little while, and there's so much information about the surfaces. Lots of, I believe that in the future, there's going to be some things that are going to change. We can't really implement those things now about indoor air quality, fresh air requirements, all that sort of stuff. But just simple cleaning of surfaces, which it sounds like y'all are going to be multiple times a day. Places like elevators, those high traffic areas, to just all of the things that people touch are going to be so critical to going forward. Like I said, I believe there's quite a few things that are going to change going forward, things we're going to be mandated to do differently, but we can't really do those in the short term. But that's a very good plan.
All right. And then kind of that second section to returning to work safely has to do with workforce. So I'd ask that Tessa, if you don't mind addressing our group here to talk about concerns that employees have about returning to work. How is that communicated effectively, and resources that are available that might assist with that area?
Yeah, so there is lots of discussion about what to do with your workspace, and as far as cleaning and spacing and all of those things. And by this point, most employers have made some adjustments. And for those who've been closed, there's lots of models that you can look to and point to about spacing and what to do. But as we're returning people, we have to think about how our people are going to return. So one thing is the availability of work. This is going to be in phases. So we're not opening everything up 100%. Right now it's 25%, especially for those folks who have been closed. So you have to think about how much work will be available to know how much workforce you're going to need to bring back. Who is needed? So what departments? If you're bringing 25%, does that mean 25% of each department, or does that mean 75% of one? And what does that look like? Some people have furloughed. There has had to do furloughs. So think about how you did the furlough and how you're going to bring those folks back. Is it going to be the same way? Is it going to be in that same order? What are going to be the conditions? And then, of course, different safety protocols, depending on who you've had at the office. So for example, maybe you had some exempt workers on site, but now you're bringing those non-exempt people that got a punch a time clock. Well, maybe your safety protocols before, you didn't have to worry about the time clock because no one was using it. but that's a high touch thing. So think about who you're bringing back, what they're going to be doing, what they're going to be touching that wasn't happening before. So that's going to change when you're talking about what work is going to start happening over these next 21 days and moving forward. But also you got to think about the people, you're bringing actual humans back. And so when you think about who you need to know who they are. Are there folks still in risk categories or caregivers of people in risk categories? Schools are still closed. They're not opening. Some daycares are open, but daycares only go to like 4 or 5, and schools are closed. So you got to think about folks needing childcare. You also need to think about, times have changed. Uber and Lyft aren't doing what they used to do. Public transportation has changed, so people's ability to get to work has changed. These are things that you got to keep in mind. Maybe people used to carpool, but if I used to carpool with my neighbor and my neighbor's not going to work anymore, that may change my situation. And also you have to think about the fear factor. Some people are still scared to come back. Some people are experiencing some increased struggling with their mental health. Some people have increased depression. Some people who have been affected personally by COVID. Others are experiencing increased anxiety. So you have to give all of those things consideration when you're thinking about bringing your workforce back and who are these people. So what do we do? There's all these things you got to think about, Tessa. So what do we do about it? And really, it's simply, for me, common sense and compassion are the ways that you look at it. And we've all talked about communication. Hopefully, you have been communicating well with your folks from day one. Hopefully you've been doing something like videos and text messaging, checking in, giving those furloughed people phone calls saying, hey, look, we furloughed you, we didn't lay you off. So we're hoping to bring you right back, and kind of updating them so they know that you meant what you said. Maybe you have a call tree where your managers are doing that rotating, checking in on your people that are working from home. You're doing those virtual happy hours. So those people don't feel like they're in the dark, and now you're calling them because you need them back, but and you're finding out they have a lot going on. So start communicating. Maybe you can send out a survey. The governor has given us a few days. So maybe you could send out some type of easy SurveyMonkey free survey to find out, can you get to work? What's going on? If you work this shift, what would we do? To figure out what's going on, get that information back. And then just deal with everybody with a little bit of common sense. If someone doesn't have childcare and you have a business where that person used to be on a morning shift, but now they can be on a night shift, let's do that. Let's be creative. If it works for your business model, to do business in a little bit of a different way right now. We're all adjusting, it's all wide open right now, right? We're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. We're on Zoom meetings all day, every day. We never used to do that, so we can do things differently that support our employees and also gets them to work and gets us profitable again. Remember, you also have to think about compliance. The FFCRA is still in effect through the end of the year. So those folks without childcare, if you're under 500, that still applies to you, and they still have that coverage. If you're over 50, you still have FMLA to consider. So if someone's having those mental health issues, if someone is going through some things, maybe that's a way that you can make it work. So, okay, we can cover you for FMLA, but that gives you some time constraints for everybody to kind of work it out and have them get back to work. There's so many things that I just implore that people be creative and have compassion and use their common sense. And then there's so many resources. Acadiana Sherm has a website, acadianassurance.org. It'll be in the notes. So we have links to local, state, and national resources. Particularly SHRM, our national organization, has a ton of templates, a ton of communication and ideas on things that you could do for your workforce. And so just figure out what's going on with your folks and make a plan and then communicate that. And I'm kind of thinking of onboarding style. You know, we make a big deal out of when a person starts and a big welcome back, and we give them the rules, we give them the procedures, we give them contact information, and all sorts of resources. That's the same kind of thing that we're having to do now. People have been out of work. People have been home since March. You know, we were talking about putting on earrings and belts for the first time today. Well, that's the same thing that they're doing. So they kind of get acclimated with their routine again. So let's support them with that and make it easy. And like someone said, there might have been, you know, make it fun. It doesn't have to be. It could make it simple and make it fun, and get everybody back to work just as safely as we can. And I think when you do that, you will hear less about people are scared. If they know what you're doing, if you involve them in the plan, they will understand all the precautions that you're taking to keep them safe, and you won't have to deal with that fear factor. Because if someone's not working, in most cases, we're just not going to be able to pay them. You know, I got to pay you for work. And so we want to be sure that people feel safe coming back. And I believe we can do that. We can make it happen.
Thank you. That's a great insight. And you know, I kind of hear the reoccurring theme of the constant communication with folks seems to be one of the key parts, but also kind of, you know, keeping that company culture. I still remember those virtual happy hours that Chad talked about, but you know, that company culture. Tessa, you touched on that. Brent and Neil, y'all all talked about the communication piece. So across the board, it's a big piece there. Do we have any other comments from other panelists on this section?
Yeah, I'd like to see
Q&A.
I'd like to see Chad in some earrings. Yeah, I would say that there's a couple of things you need to consider when you're bringing people back, because we've had to do some furloughs, had to help people, you know, get on unemployment. Thanks to Ryan gave us some great resources. We found resources in other states. We actually do it for them, you know, and got them through the process, but we stay connected. I really think you need to have some teams, and it doesn't have to be HR people, teams of people who are communicating with people who are out. And when they're coming back, you need to script it. You know what you're going to say, make sure you're ready. But if you're returning somebody to work and you furloughed somebody, you really need to have a return to work document. I didn't send that in, but I do have some. I would encourage you to network. There's plenty of things out there. Do not start anything from scratch. If you're needing something, reach out and talk to somebody. If you don't have something, you're welcome to call me. I'll give you whatever we have. You know, those kind of things. I won't charge you like some of the lawyers would. But reach out and network, because Neil has stuff, Chad has stuff, Tess has stuff. We all know people. If I don't have something, I may know somebody who can help you. I just say network. Make sure that you think about it. No matter how big or small you are, we're all dealing with the same issues. We're trying to make people feel, you know, grounded and hopeful, and that we're going to get through this. And so somehow, you know, just there's stuff out there. Don't feel like you need to start from scratch. To me, that's the hardest thing to do. Just start something from scratch. So reach out and network and find the things that'll work for your team.
Great. Any other comments before we move on to Q&A? No, we're good. All right, Andre, you want to take us into Q&A?
Yes. So thank y'all. And we had a few questions come in from the audience during the discussion. The first one was from Ann, and it relates to implications for travel. We had a prior webinar on impacts to the tourism economy, so we're not planning to get into too much detail on that today. But do any of y'all have travel-related policies that you're implementing with your companies during this time?
Yeah, we've cut it all off. We're not allowing people to travel. Once it comes back, but we pretty much stopped all travel except for essential travel. When in some cases we have to send drivers to locations and they may be able to travel, but for the most part, yes, we do have something in place that we could share. But really, for the most part, you need to look at each of the states, right? So we had to look at certain travel, and I had to provide certain documentation to the people traveling. So I have letters that go with them, saying they're essential workers, saying that on our behalf and their schedule. So if somebody needs that, you can reach out to me. I'll be glad to share.
Yeah, I've seen lots of companies put travel restrictions in place. I know a lot of trade shows and different things have canceled, so there are fewer options, but definitely if that's a concern for your workforce and you think that's something that could help to keep everyone safe, then it's certainly a smart thing to put those travel restrictions and just whatever is applicable for your company. If it's air travel or certain distances, whatever that means, feel free definitely to do that. But as we've been saying, communicate it.
We had another question from Marie Collins about face masks, the use of masks. And she's wondering if companies and organizations can require the public to wear face masks in their building. And if the public refuses, are they allowed to refuse entry? I don't know if anyone can speak to that.
So I'm not an attorney, Andre, but
Right.
I think you have all the right if a customer or someone comes into your building, if they can't social distance or they can't maintain that 6 feet of distance between, yes, I think you can require them to wear a face covering. Now, again, check with your local attorney for the actual legal advice, but I think you're well within your rights to do that.
It's also going to be based on local ordinances and local laws. So there are websites out there that are tracking all the different laws. Some of them have things in place where you do, when you're in public, have to, others not. But I would assume this is someone who's a customer facing. If it's a customer facing, and you kind of have to provide some type of, structure where you maintain the social distancing. But as far as requiring masks,
requiring that, right?
No, you can only require masks, from what our attorneys have said, when the local ordinance or something that supports it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually the local order says if you're not able to ensure social distancing for a safe environment, then maybe it's not the right time for you to open. So.
Right.
I think this might also be a good time to talk about visitors. You may not be a customer facing business, but you may have visitors, you may have vendors who, for shipping and all that. So that's something else that you want to think about when you think about your folks. What are going to be your rules there, and what are you going to restrict in your workplace? If you have your folks wearing masks, are you going to require visitors? Are you going to let visitors come at all? So that's definitely something else to consider what you want to do.
One of the things
we've talked. I'm sorry. One thing we've talked about doing, and I know we're a little unique, right? We're an office building where people engage in a different way than they do in other businesses, but we're just trying to sidestep that as much as possible. So we're trying to have, continue to have as many virtual meetings as we can, but have people vendors. We have a lot of sales reps and things that need to come in and show us their products. We're just encouraging them to walk us through their website and just have a phone conversation about those things. And then things like shipping and those sorts of vendors, we've really tried to isolate those people to a certain area right inside the front door that can really be monitored. So we're just not allowing as much mingling of people beyond that front little area that we can control. And like I said, just sidestepping as many face-to-face meetings as we can, while still being able to do what we need to do.
And you can screen as well. So just like
Right.
Bill was talking about having a screen, we've taken our paper screen and put it on an app or, you know, a link. So it's not an app they have to download. So if we have any visitors, they're going to have to, prior to coming, has to fill out the app. So it's a self-attestation questionnaire. So that we're not taking temperatures with the infrared. We've had too many attorneys tell us not to do that, but I mean, you know, they get worried about those things. But we are doing self-attestation so that they answer these questions, and if they answer the questions, then they're allowed to come on site. Same thing with employees.
The next set of questions relate to keeping the building safe and clean, and kind of some of the work you've done, Chad, on healthy buildings. Joe Mo pointed out a nature.com study that says stagnant water in unused buildings can harbor infectious bacteria and heavy metals, and that scientists point out the guidance on reopening is limited. So she shared that resource with us. And then Conrad asks, what are you using to clean surfaces, since wipes of any kind are very scarce right now?
Well, it sounds like Brent came up with a good product that they created. You know, one thing about the stagnant water comment, it's really not related to this, but it just might be helpful to people, that whenever buildings are vacant for a little while, if everybody's left, sometimes the traps, particularly in floor drains, will dry out and there'll be a bad smell. And so really just kind of coming back whenever you start to open a building back up, if you just kind of smell something, you can try just pouring a pitcher of water down the floor drain just to try that out. But yeah, I mean, anything, from a disinfectant standpoint, I think anything that really, you know, kills microbes is good, but from what I understand, anything that wipes that away is good. That's limited information that I have, but anything that just wipes anything that's on the surface away, just a moist cloth can really do that.
And so, Andre, I'll add on to, if you want disinfectant information, because we've had to research tons of this for approved cleaners, simply for the ambulances and such. And so, soap and water is like one of your best cleaning methods, right?
Yes.
It basically, it's surfactant, and it kind of reduces or removes the virus particles. If you don't have any of this stuff, right? If you just take bleach, and CDC has this on their website, a bleach solution, and it's not much, and I can't remember the formula off the top of my head, but it's a very small amount of bleach into a gallon of water, and you have your own disinfectant that you can use.
Correct.
As a disinfectant to clean.
There's also some local places that are starting to have it where you can buy in bulk. So what we're doing is purchasing the containers, and we put them in there and we label it. So we're going to put it at every copy machine, every printer. We're going to have a station. We're going to have it at all those communal areas. You know, instead of putting, you know, ordering those $17 a bottle, 2-ounce ones that you can't find anywhere. So we've made it readily available at all locations at particular spots. But I agree, the soap and water is really your best bet for those cases. But we still provide that because people want to see you kind of go above and beyond, in my opinion, in these situations.
Agreed.
We have time for about 2 more questions. The next one is a workforce question, and I might direct this one to Tessa. Someone asked, if an employee is scared to come back to work, but her job is not conducive with continuing to work remotely, what would you suggest we do? We want to be compassionate, but need her services as a receptionist.
Absolutely. So that is I would say, go through that conversation, get to the source of the fear, and figure out what it is that's scaring her about sitting at that front desk. I'm sure you get it. She's probably saying, look, I'm the one, y'all are safe back there in your offices, and I'm the one at the front. Every time that door opens, I'm the one person who sees everyone who comes in. Okay, so that should be something that you as an employer that you're thinking about. So how are we going to protect she or he, receptionists? What protections are you going to give? Are you going to put a plexiglass? Are you going to put a sign that says, please wear a mask? Are you going to put a marker on the floor that says, don't come closer than this. What safety measures are you going to put in place? Ask her what would make you feel more safe and see what she says. She may have the best idea that you didn't think of. And so that's where you have that conversation. One, that conversation in itself will help to comfort her because she feels heard. Two, you can put things in place. At the end of the day, if none of that is successful, then you have an honest conversation. We have put things in place. We feel that you are protected and safe. If you cannot do this job at this time, well, then these are your options. And then she has a decision to make. You as an employer, you're responsible for giving her a good, safe workplace and hearing her out. But if that is not acceptable to her, that's okay. Then it really becomes her choice, though.
Awesome. Well, we have time for one more question. We're right at 10 o'clock. The last one is a general question, so anyone can chime in. Cameron asks, is your company concerned about any liability issues with reopening and bringing employees back to the office?
Yes. Yes, you always need to be concerned about it. But I would pay close attention to Congress this week and the next week as they're looking at, whether or not they're going to protect businesses and how that's going to be. But with that said, you still always have workers' comp issues. You're still going to always have ADA issues. It's unfortunate, but there will be people, that will take advantage of these things, no matter how protective you are or how forthright we are with employees. So yes, I would say you need to look at that. You need to be careful, be vigilant, go above and beyond. I call it good faith. So if somebody, just as Tess was saying, don't ever say no, ask questions, find out what's at the heart of what you're trying to do. And if you can make an accommodation, make an accommodation. I think we've all been accommodating at this point. We need to continue to be accommodating as we move forward and not just have a black or white situation going forward.
Does anyone else want to jump in on that before we wrap up or share any other parting thoughts?
I just thought Brent's comment before about being grounded but hopeful really relates to this. I mean, I think that we could all kind of run and hide and be fearful, but of course there's, it's going to be very different. And I just think we have to be diligent and we have to, do the best we can.
Mm-hmm.
And document.
Absolutely. Communicate, share, and be fair.
Yep.
And I think that's a great place to end right there. So that does bring us to the end of today's webinar. We want to thank our panel, Chad Abell, Tessa Brown, Neil Davis, and Brent Hebert, and our moderator, Ryan Lagrange, for the informative discussion. And thank you to all of our participants for joining us. We will be sharing the video recording and other materials, the resources our panelists referred to within the next 24 hours, and they will also be posted on our COVID-19 resources page. We hope today's webinar was helpful, and we look forward to offering additional Acadiana Business Resource webinars going forward. Stay tuned for follow-up emails from us and our partners. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you all again, and please stay safe.
Thanks,
guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.